This week on Wu Says, we're kicking off on a new mini-series on the Asian financial crisis of the late 1990s. The first episode takes a step back to look at the big picture, why it happened and what the consequences were. Here's a segment from Melisa Idris' conversation with Professor Emeritus Datuk Dr. Thye.
So, I mean, that's a really kind of bitter pill to swallow, the fact that the lessons of the Asian financial crisis we haven't actually acted enough on them in the US. And I want to ask you about here in the region. So talk to me about the consequences of the AFC in Asia. What happened in Asia that in hindsight now you see, did we learn the lessons here in this region?
Okay. Two sets of lessons. One is on the economic side, and the other side, big change in the region, is on the political side. Let us start with the economic side first. One thing we do know is that in a time of trouble, the only reliable source of help is self-help. In other words, no one's going to come bail you up unless you are an important political ally of a big power. For example, if that's why Suharto, when Indonesia got into trouble, Suharto expected the Americans to mobilize Japan and the IMF to bail out the Indonesian banks and saved him. Because that would not be the first time that Suharto was bailed out by the Americans. The Americans bailed him out in 1966. They bailed him out during the Pertamina crisis of the 1970s. And they bailed him out in the 1980s when there was a global slowdown. So Suharto knew that the US had his back. But what he did not realize was that 1997 was no longer 1983 or 1966. It's because the Cold War was over. They no longer needed Indonesia to be a staunch ally against the communists. That is number one. And number two, Suharto was very old. He was by about 80 years old. And so the Americans could see that his days were numbered. So they would rather support his successor than to delay the political transition. So they told Suharto, well, we are not going to bail you out this time. And when he heard this, Suharto said, if that is true, I'll be gone in 3 months. And he was right. He was gone in 3 months. So, in other words, if the global geopolitical situation changed for a big important country like Indonesia, that changed the end of the Soviet Union and of competing ideology, meant that the US don't have to spend money to bail out its friends because there's no Soviet Union who's going to come and take over that friend.
Catch the full conversation on AWANI International and across our social media platforms.